Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Shaw, the director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Thanks for joining another installment of our series, Meet the Mayor. Today, we're really delighted to be joined by one of the real interesting municipal leaders in the state of Illinois, Kathy Adduci. Kathy is the village president of River Forest, which is a western suburb of Chicago. Kathy has a very interesting background, grew up in the south side of Chicago, went to Northern Illinois as an undergrad, studied marketing, went to Loyola, got an MBA, then worked in the private sector for her career, 30 some years at Unis, which is an important company in the Northern Illinois part of the state. She retired as an executive vice president and general manager, supervised nearly 1,000 people with a budget of about $1 billion. She's been recently elected last year for her third term as village president, pardon me, of River Forest, and also has a really interesting role. She is the first vice president of the Illinois Municipal League and is going to become their president starting next month. And so we want to hear about that. So we're interested in hearing about her career, her community, and her agenda at the Illinois Municipal League. And she's joining us from home. So Kathy, great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for having me.
Great. Well, as I mentioned, you grew up in the south side of Chicago. I think you were in a family of 5 kids. You were the only girl. Talk about growing up in that kind of environment.
Yeah, it was wild. As anybody knows, coming from a big family, although growing up in the 60s and the 70s, a family of 5 was actually considered small. Where I came from I'm Irish and Italian descent. And my family, my father, born and raised in Italy. So I'm the first generation here in the United States. My mother was Irish, but she was the second generation. So if you can imagine, I mean, many of the families in the south side of Chicago grew up with 10, 12 kids. So I was blessed to have 4 brothers. And I would consider my growing up as survival. Uh, when you have 4 brothers, you learn to survive in that group. So it was a lot of fun. We grew up in a very traditional Italian way where a family lived on your block. And we ate together and, you stay together. So I have a lot of fond memories growing up. On the south side, and there's still, in the Beverly area, there's still a lot of friends that I have in that area.
And so you went to, I think, St. Anthony's Grammar School and Elizabeth Seton High School in South Holland,
Right.
Illinois. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, John. Yep, good Catholic family that we are. St. Anthony's is grammar school, then went on to an all-girl school, Elizabeth Seton. Unfortunately, it's closed now, but it was right off of the highway right there in South Holland, Illinois. And then I went on to get my college degree at Northern Illinois University, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I loved that school. And then went on and got my master's in finance at Loyola University in Chicago.
And then did you make the immediate move from your MBA program to the private sector job that you held for? I know you had a number of different positions there, but did they recruit you right out of Loyola?
No, in fact, they recruited me out of Northern Illinois University. Actually, Unisys is a merger of Burroughs and Sperry. Don't know if you remember those names in the past. Burroughs. I started with Burroughs actually in 1980, and Burroughs, William Burroughs, which is the company's named after, actually invented the adding machine. That really ages me, but I didn't invent the adding machine. Mr. Burroughs did. I just worked for Burroughs during that time. In the 1980s. So Sperry Univac, if you remember Memorex and Ella Fitzgerald and that commercial, well, Sperry Univac and Burroughs merged in I think it's 84, and it created the company Unisys Corporation. So it was 2 $5 billion companies coming together to create a $10 billion company. And I think our motto was the power of 2. So it was an interesting way to look at mergers back then in technology. There were so many disruptive technologies coming out, whether it was Google, Facebook, social media. There's no such things as the cell phone back then at that time. So it's just interesting how the dynamics of large corporations like Unisys, which could have been 10 billion. However, I think the company's currently $4 billion. Competing against companies like IBM, HP, DEC, Dell. I'm sure you're hearing all these past technology firms. Some of are still in existence. Some of them are gone. So it's kind of a fun industry to be in because I felt like there was every 2 years I was working for, someone new when in fact I wasn't. I was still in the same company.
Well, yeah, in fact, I saw an interview where you said I worked for a Fortune 500 company where different views were welcomed, where change was the norm, and where disruption often meant progress. I've learned in my life that the whole is better than the parts. Talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit.
Sure. And well, all of it is true. When you look back at, a big corporation offers a lot of opportunities for, people like myself. And so I'm very grateful for that. I took advantage of a lot of those opportunities as I was, growing up in the corporation and growing into it. I had lots of different roles starting out in sales and marketing and into operations and then human resources, and then eventually into general management and executive director. So which made me have responsibility for many parts of the company. So I very much enjoyed that. The opportunities were endless, and I took advantage of them. I also believe that big company for me, well, as you said, the bigger part, the whole is better than the parts, and I learned quite a bit as I moved through the corporation and the disruption. And again, it's not a bad disruption. The word disruption often means bad, but it actually, in the world of our technology, it created a ton of change, which, change could be fun and it could be challenging at the same time, but a lot of fun when you see the industry really moving, very differently than where, you thought it was going to move. I mean, we always make an analogy of what airplanes did to trains. Well, what did mobile phones do to mainframes? Very similar kind of an analogy of how it shifted the industry. In that case, it was transportation. How transportation was shifted from trains to airplanes, and our shifts to something that was very large and complex and very expensive to something that's very simple now that you use in your hand and very cheap and affordable. So interesting dynamics.
Tell us about the impetus to run for village president. Then, how was it? What was the thought process? What encouraged you to make the run?
Well, I was still working, and before I retired, I ran. Well, I actually was appointed clerk back in 2007. And, we're like a small little town. Now, some people often call us Mayberry. And that's how, but we're bigger than Mayberry, and we got more than one stoplight. So and we got more than just two police officers, but we're that kind of elk, we're very, very small, and everyone knows everyone. It's a very generational community. And I tell you this because when I was asked to look at, hey, would you ever be interested in being appointed clerk? Because at the time, the current clerk ran for trustee. She won, and it opened up the spot for clerk. And it was actually a good friend of mine that our girls played soccer together. And it literally was on the sidelines of the soccer field that the trustee Conti said, would you be interested in a clerk? We're looking for somebody to do that. I mean, we're a small community. Everybody knows each other. And I thought, well, what does a clerk do? I mean, well, the clerk doesn't do anything really. You just sit there and you really learn about your community. And I thought, well, I could do that. Even though I was traveling and I had a very high powered job, I thought, this might be a good way to get into being part of my community without a large commitment. And so I really enjoyed the 2 years as I was clerk. And I did realize at that point that it does take unique leadership to run a village. You can't just leave it up to hope that somebody will take it on and do the right thing. And so that's why I decided then at that point in time I'd run for trustee, and I won. And the thing that I learned as I put my hat in the ring, if you will, was, wow, I started out really not knowing many people in River Forest, because I traveled all the time. And, and I thought, well, I'm really only here the weekends, and, mostly that would be spent with my family. So I never really thought I knew enough people that could vote for me. I didn't know. So when I ran for trustee, I was the second highest vote getter. So that made me a little bit at ease. I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this is doable in the future. And so the gentleman that was president at the time, when I was trustee, decided he was not going to run again. And then that's in 2013 was that year. And I thought, well, geez, I think I could be a good mayor. I think I could be a good village president. I think I'm going to put my hat in the ring. So that was the evolution for me in government. It was, part and parcel of, actually still working. And then along the way, like 7 years ago, so I was village president at the time. That's when I retired. So I did juggle a lot, but I'm glad I started out as clerk and then moved on to trustee and then eventually village president. It gave me a real good insight of how government runs.
Well, let's talk for just a second about the structure, because village is not as maybe a familiar term for us as, a town or city. And so the village president is sort of tantamount to the mayor, and trustees is aldermen. I think you have 6 trustees. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. You're right. I think it's just how, when one got incorporated as a city or a village, or I know there are, villages our size that are called city. And, but yeah, we back in 1880, when we incorporated, I believe that was when we was called the Village of River Forest. And the village president is, likened to mayor. I don't see it any different. I think it's our form of government that may make us all different versus maybe the names. I don't think the form of government actually changes the names of the elected officials. Like for instance, we're a strong mayor / village president form of government. In other words, the board and I make the policy decisions, and we ask the administration to implement those policy decisions in sometimes they call it the weak mayor or the weak form of mayor, village president, or you could call it a strong administration form of government. That type of government is a little bit opposite, where the administration actually creates the policy, and the board, approves the policy, and then asks the administration to implement it. So it's a little less, I think, directly involved with policy. At least that's our neighbor right next to us, Oak Park, has that type of form of government where it's more of the stronger administration form of government versus River Forest. We have a strong mayor form of government.
And as I understand it, none of you are compensated. Is that right? This is all volunteer work, effectively, or?
Yeah, well, we can't call it volunteer, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't know if but we are truly public servants. I think we can call ourselves public servants because we actually get elected to the position. So versus being appointed. And I think maybe that might be the difference between volunteerism and public servant. But yes, River Forest, started out and continues to be the elected officials do not get paid. And I don't even take a stipend of any kind, not even an expense stipend. And I think it started simply because people who ran for these jobs and responsibilities were obviously employed. And this wasn't a form of employment. This was just a way to create more community. And although now it's shifted and probably changed, policy matters so much more, I think, in today's environment, and the involvement of elected officials are so much greater that it does take up a ton of more time. But even that, it hasn't moved me to want to be paid by the village. That's okay. I still believe that we all should give back to the community.
Right. Well, you put out a wonderful comprehensive city report in 2019, comprehensive plan, I should call it. And I want to read a couple of sentences and just have you kind of describe your community, because you write, the report says, the village is known for its high quality of life, amazing public and private schools, attractive and architecturally, pardon me, rich neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, beautiful single-family homes, and historically significant properties. Tell us about River Forest.
Well, that's it. We are very blessed to have, some just wonderful, schools and parks and libraries. We're nestled in a 2.5 mile. We're only 2.5 square miles, and we have nearly 12,000 residents. And the majority of our land, just the way it was created back in the late 1800s, in 1900s, is that it was created to be single family homes. And so that's why where we now have these wonderful historic beautiful homes, because they were created in 1920, 1908, 1907, and they were built to last. And so we have these quaint, beautiful streets. We have amazing schools and parks, and yet we're 10 minutes with no traffic away from Chicago. And so we find ourselves really lucky because we can have that urban feel, and have everything available to us that Chicago provides, like symphony and arts and things that we all enjoy, just 10, 15, 20 minutes away from our home. And yet we can get to home and feel like we're in a different part of the world, because we're just this small, quaint community. So yeah, it's beautiful.
And as I understand from your report, you talk about it, just for people who maybe know the Chicago area, I'm trying to locate it. You share borders with Oak Park, Forest Park, Maywood, Melrose Park, Elmwood Park, and Chicago. Is
That's
that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
When we have conversations with mayors, you're our first village president. One of the things that's kind of a fun feature of the conversation, when I ask about the nature of the job, they invariably say that there is, every week or so they go out, to the grocery store to grab a quick, gallon of milk or something like that, and 2 hours later they're returning home because they've been buttonholed by constituents, asking questions, making suggestions, etc. When you, make that, hopefully quick trip to the grocery store and you meet with people, I mean, what do they ask you? What are the things that are on their mind?
Well, safety is probably the number one issue that we often talk about, and it's just not safety in the community. It's safety around us. So that, I think, consumes a lot of our conversation. We're seeing more and more traffic, believe it or not, even though for the last 2 years, maybe because we weren't traveling because of COVID, we're just seeing a huge uptick in cut through traffic in our community, and people don't want to go on Harlem or North Avenue. They want to just cut through and get where they're getting real quick. Which causes a lot of concern for our community, because we still have small children on bicycles, just trying to bicycle through their community. So I would say it's a combination of the broader public safety issue to the smaller, how do we make sure that we stay quaint and nice and calm for our children to get on a bike and go 5 blocks away.
Well, in the comprehensive report, you list 3 big issues. Health and safety was the first one. The other one is the issue of property taxes, and the third is quality of life. The property tax, let's talk about that, because I think in 2020 you initiated a major initiative to, freeze the village portion of the property tax. Tell us about the impetus for doing that, how you've paid for it, and just really how property taxes continue to affect people in your community.
Yeah, great. It's a great question. And it's probably the second most question that's asked is, what about those property taxes? And so I often start out trying to explain how a property tax is actually calculated. Because we're, most villages, cities, whatever, whoever you talk to, most people believe that the majority of their tax bill goes to the city, when in fact, and I'm almost certain about this, majority of almost all municipalities go to the school system, because the school system tends to be the higher portion of your tax bill. And in our case, in River Forest, our property tax bill, for instance, if we tax you $1, 72 cents of that dollar will go to our school systems, our middle school and our high school and our community college. 11% or 11 cents of that dollar actually goes to the village. And what do we get for that in the village? You get police, fire, infrastructure, water, sewer. You get a lot for that 11 cents that you pay. But we also know that 11 cents is still a lot of money. And we need to ensure that our village portion of your tax bill is always, we're always constantly ensuring that we're doing things that are more efficient. With my background in technology, the one thing I thought I could do really well, and I think I did very well here in River Forest, is we implemented a lot of online processes. Not that we want to get, rid of people. It wasn't the point of trying to move people out. It was trying to redirect them into a higher level of customer service versus just doing paperwork. And so my goal when I started in 2013 is to try to get all the paperwork that we did, whether it was permitting, whatever, vehicle stickers, all of that online and done through another mechanism that it didn't cost a high level of employment to get it done. So we can redirect those dollars, that employee, to a higher level of customer service. And people then would feel much greater about their tax dollars because they're getting a higher level of service and truthfully more service for that money. So I think we started making that turn early on. You mentioned, and because of that, and other things that we did, we constantly are looking at ways to save money. We are truly a fiduciary of our taxpayers' money. And so every time we make a decision on what to spend it on, it's always in the mind of, I'm a taxpayer too in River Forest. So it's always in the mind, is this something that I think is worthwhile to do? And will the taxpayer think it is worthwhile? So we were able, through just good efficiencies and again, using technology, good discussion around employment, to save some money. So yes, you're right. A couple of years ago, we decided to not take our tax levy or our CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. And because of that, we kept our tax rate that year even year over year, even though we still had some increases. We had inflationary increases of, well, in that case, it was in 2019 and 20, we had historically low inflation as well. So we did a couple of very interesting things in River Forest, which I think is somewhat visionary on the board and I part. And that is, one, we had historically low interest rates. So we borrowed against those, municipal funds at that very low interest rate. And we took some of that bonded money and we accelerated infrastructure projects that we knew we needed to do, whether it was sewer projects or alley improvements. We have about 30% of our homes have alleys, and they're traditionally just been concrete and regular alleys. And, with the climate change, we're seeing historic rainfalls. I know California's seeing droughts, but we're seeing historic rainfalls. We used to call it 100-year rainfalls. Now we're seeing 500-year rainfalls. So what we're finding that as many of our homes that are on alleys, because there's no place for the water to go, was going into their garages, into their yards, and then eventually into their homes. So we decided we had historically low interest rates. We could bond against those historically low interest rates. We can accelerate our alley improvements and start putting in pavers or more permeable, surfaces so that water would seep through the surface and not into people's homes. And we're just wrapping up that project now because it took us several years to get it done. Again, we spent money to save money. And we knew that we could save money in the long haul. And therefore we could take that advantage of not taxing the taxpayer, or increasing our tax rate. So yeah, we did a lot of interesting, I think, creative financing that allowed us to take advantage of what historically businesses do into government.
Right. Well, one of the other issues that is real apparent in your literature is just the challenge of aging in place. You have an older population. I think 65 and older is maybe the largest or the fastest growing segment. And a lot of people, lived in your community for a long time, want to stay there. Lots of challenges with that. Talk about that initiative. I know because it probably has public safety dimensions and transportation. Talk about
Oh,
that.
yeah, John, thanks for asking, because that is one of my major areas of focus is aging in place. Not just because I want to age in place, but because I think our community would like to age in place. We do have an interesting statistic that I think is relatively common amongst many of the cities, is that about 75% of our residents don't use the school system. Not because it's not amazing. It's not because it's not wonderful. It's because they don't have to, or they don't need to use the school system. They're empty nesters. They may have come here with their kids already grown. So that's a fairly large grouping of residents that live in River Forest. And as I said earlier, most of our residents are single family homes. So we have limited multi-unit homes just simply because the way the village was built many, many, many years ago. So that means that there are many families that are here that want to age in place. They're not leaving, and they want to age in place. They love their community. And in fact, what we're finding is some of the children of the families are actually coming back to River Forest, and they want to find a home in River Forest. So we want these residents to stay. They're wonderful residents. They've paid their way over the last so many years. We want them to now enjoy their community. And so we're trying to, looking at ways to make it better for them, as you mentioned, transportation, housing. So what are we doing in the housing area? Well, we put up a 128 facility for assisted living right on Harlem in Chicago. It's called the Sheridan. It's for assisted living and memory care, so that, families that have a parent that need that is now right in River Forest. They don't have to go very far. They can put their parent right there. We're also looking at what we call auxiliary dwelling units for our homes. That policy would allow families to actually build what they used to call coach houses. So we're hoping that would again keep the aging of the parent in place. Transportation, we're working with Pace Bus and other transportation facilities to try to move our our older adults along. We're looking at all of our sidewalks and especially for what we call trip hazards. We don't think about it when we were younger. We used to skip over, the little, if it was uneven surfaces, right? I just hop over that. Now as you start aging, you can't just hop. There's a potential of tripping. And so we really are looking at, ensuring that, our sidewalks and our curbs and so forth are not only age friendly, but also those with disabilities as well, friendly, because we do have a grouping of residents that are in wheelchairs or walkers, and we want to make sure that they feel comfortable moving around in River Forest too. We also have, grocery stores. They're all walkable. We're pretty much a walkable village. You could stay right within River Forest and not really cross a major street. If you go to Oak Park, you have to cross Harlem. If you go to Elma Park, you have to cross North Avenue. But if you stay within River Forest and just go within River Forest, there's really no major highway or street other than maybe Lake Street, and you can go to a store or something like that and keep it as safe as possible. So we believe that we are a community for those that want to age in place and want to stay with their family. So we're real proud of it. I also chair the age friendly committee for the Mayor's Caucus. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the Mayor's Metropolitan Caucus, which is slightly different than the IML. I know we'll get to that, but they are just, a grouping of communities within the west northern part of Chicago. I went to them and I said, I think this is something that frankly goes across all political boundaries, right? We all age, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we age, and we age fairly similarly. So we should all look at ways we can make a community more age friendly. So they said, great idea, Kathy, would you lead it? And I said, of course. And so I chair the committee, and I'm real proud of it because we're working with AARP, who is a big sponsor, of course, for older adults. And they've got a lot to offer, AARP. And I would encourage every community or city to look at what AARP has to offer. They have a lot to offer communities that have an aging population as well. So it's fun.
Great. Tell us about your relationship with Maywood. I know there's a compact that you have developed or are developing. It's an adjacent community. Talk about that, if you would, please.
Love to. Yeah, they're a wonderful neighbor of ours. We've always had them as a neighbor, of course, but I think what's highlighted our relationship the most is obviously the tragedy that happened with George Floyd, and I think it heightened our responsibility to work together to ensure that whatever we're doing we can do together that makes sense for our communities. And so when we talked at the time, now with the new mayor, Mayor Booker and I and the current trustees, I mean, we really are working to try to find ways that we can do more together. And one great example, which we just completed, it's just not with Maywood, but it's with Broadview and 14 other communities that surround us, is that we've come together to create what we call a collaboration for climate control. And the reason we came together on that is because we're all really trying to do the similar things, whether it's solar energy, water conservation, composting, waste hauling. We all have similar efforts along the lines of climate control. And so we decided that that would be a great way for all of us to work together, because River Forest is probably slightly ahead of what Maywood is doing or Broadview is doing. And they acknowledge that. And so they see that as a great example of collaboration between our communities, that we could just say, here, we've already gone through what it takes to do solar permitting. We know what it takes to do EV car charging, and we're off to go. Here's some, thought processing around that. And it's just a great way to collaborate. It doesn't cost money. It's just saying, here, we're sharing with all of you our ideas, and hopefully you'll share back your ideas. And it doesn't cost the community anything. It really actually helps our community, because hopefully, what we share, we get back to. So we are real happy to, be part of that Maywood collaboration, but we're trying to make it, I guess what I'm saying is, a broader, with all of our surrounding communities, do similar collaboration that the covenant started, if that makes sense.
Let's talk about the Illinois Municipal League. You are going to be next month the president. Congratulations. And we've actually, for this series, had conversations with presidents. We had a wonderful chat with Mayor Rockingham from North Chicago a couple of years ago. And then just last year, Mayor Julie Moore-Wolf from Decatur, who's going to be vacating the presidency, I think, in September. So tell us about, one, how you sort of plunged in to become active in the IML, and what you want to do with your presidency.
Yeah, well, great. Well, John, very similar to what I was just talking about earlier, about how even the neighboring communities got together to collaborate. What I realized is that the Illinois Municipal League was such a great resource for cities and villages like ourselves, that I needed to get closer to the IML, just so that I could find out what they can give back to our village. It sounded selfish, but it was more that's the way it started. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's so much there that the Illinois Municipal League can give cities and villages that, we should take advantage of all of this. So I decided to get more and more involved with the IML, and then got elected as one of their board members, and then was appointed in the rotation of being one of their vice president, and hopefully coming this September will be the president. I think the Illinois Municipal League is, as mentioned, is such a valuable tool to cities and villages. They do so much for us. And so my hope is that, and vision is that, not only getting the word out, but just finding certain key areas that villages and cities can actually see that because of the IML and because of the collaboration that happens between and within the IML, these are things that can get done. I'll give you a great example. Brad, under Brad's leadership, Brad Cole's leadership, who's the executive director, and other presidents before me, they really worked really hard on pension consolidation. That is a huge, huge thing for a village or a city. It's going to save us, a lot of money. And because of their efforts, we get to benefit from that. And I think that's big. And there's more things we can do, but that's a great example of why Illinois Municipal League and all the mayor's involvement is so important, because there really is something that you get out of it.
When mayors from Illinois talk and visit with each other and they talk about their challenges, what is the most common concern about Springfield and state government? Is it unfunded mandates? Is it that the flow of funds is not always going to the local level as it should? What do you mayors wish Springfield understood better?
Another great question. Well, first and foremost, I think we'd all agree that we wish they would understand better the need to restore our local government distribution fund. Back in the 70s, when this agreement was made between the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago to provide 10% to cities across Illinois, that was to help fund certain key projects. Unfortunately, over the course of the past at least 5 to 6, 7 years, Springfield has chiseled away at that 10%. And we're currently sitting slightly above 6%. We'd like to restore it back to the 10%. I think that's the right and just thing to do for the cities and the villages. It's simply because, not only because it was an agreement, I understand agreements can get canceled, but because that's what we used for some essential services. If we can't use that, the local government distribution fund, then it needs to go back to the taxpayers and to fund. So we're hoping that we can restore that fund back to its original 10%. And of course, as you mentioned, the other thing that we talk about at great length is unfunded mandates. We know and understand the need for mandates. Nobody would disagree with that requirement, but we also say to the Springfield, you got to realize that that's not free. And every time something gets passed, that's a mandate, that then it needs to go back to the taxpayers to fund. I mean, there's no magic behind it. It's and I realize it's harder to find, the root cause of an issue, but, and maybe that's what Springfield thinks sometimes, but it isn't, because we're talking up. It's like, it's not us that made this decision, it was Springfield. And so I think our goal is to work collaboratively with our counterparts in Springfield, our state legislature. I think we've got some great leadership in place. And I think if we work collaboratively together, I truly believe that these unfunded mandates will happen not less and less and less. And if there happens to be a mandate, perhaps we can find a way collectively of how to fund it. But those are really the topics is that. I mean, we care about our community, we care about the safety of our community, and we care that it's affordable to live in our communities. And you can't do it if you keep telling us we have to pay for more.
Right. Kathy, we've had some great questions mailed in. One, Mary O'Hara from Carbondale notes that the U.S. Conference of Mayors passed a resolution in, I guess it's 2020, supporting basic income. And apparently, since that time, mayors in 82 cities across 22 states have initiated guaranteed income programs. Two in Illinois are Evanston and Moline. Do you have any thoughts about this as sort of a movement among mayors pushing this concept of guaranteed income programs?
I don't know of a major movement. I know there's some conversations along this lines. I believe Cook County may have even talked about some of this just in general, but no, I don't believe that I see it as a movement as of yet.
Okay. Dave Jones from Bloomington, Indiana said that many years ago he lived in Oak Park and was struck by the strong collaborative relationship it had with River Forest. And he's wondering if that is still in place.
Yes, well, we still have a high school together. So Oak Park River Forest is still in full and is strong and doing well. We share we mutual aid amongst our towns. So police and fire, we share a 911 center with Oak Park and Forest Park. So we have a lot of a good, we've done a lot and we continue to do more with Oak Park. We consider them, people sometimes don't even realize our boundaries. They'll think that they're in Oak Park when they're in fact in River Forest, because we really do look very similar. So, and we have Frank Lloyd Wright homes. Frank Lloyd Wright did have built some homes here in River Forest. So we have, as you mentioned earlier in the program, we have beautiful architecturally designed homes, much like you'll see in the northern part of Oak Park. So yeah, we have a lot, and we continue to have, I think, the world of the village president over at Oak Park, Vicki Skaman. She's doing some great things there.
Talk about your relationship with Dominican University. How does your village work with that university?
We are unique in that we have two universities. I don't know if everyone knows that, but we have Dominican University, who's wonderful, and we have Concordia University of Chicago that also sits in our boundaries. So we are very, very appreciative of both of them. They're wonderful partners in many ways. I think you'll hear people, residents, and sometimes in general, a conversation about, well, geez, they don't pay property taxes. Why are they so wonderful? And I remind people that, yes, that's true. I mean, they don't pay property taxes, and even though it's it's hard to have an institution that hasn't paid property taxes for the last, 100 years, to ask them to pay property taxes, but it's better for us to have a better relationship with our partners in Dominican and Concordia, and they provide a lot of value back to our community. Dominican has a phenomenal performing arts center that we, the village, make great use of, and the residents make great use of. Concordia has a phenomenal track and athletic area that our community uses on a very regular basis. We also, the students that come into those two universities are very respectful of our community, and we're very appreciative of that. We have very little, knock on wood, very little issues with the school just in general, but they're very good partners, and we're very pleased that they're part of us.
Great. Well, let me ask you this. What is the best part of the job and what is the most challenging?
Well, believe it or not, the best part of the job is meeting that person in the Jewel that you mentioned, or the grocery store. I just love that. I think the only way we can really govern, I believe, in anything, especially in this job or my position, is to talk to people. Hear them out. What's the best? What's on their mind? That's the only way I can look for a solution if I know what's on their mind. So I don't mind the 2-hour stop. I'm trying to make it an hour, but if they've got a lot on their mind, I guess I'll give them my time. I think that's the best part, believe it or not. It seems like for some, it might be a nuisance. To me, it's a great joy. The thing I think is the most challenging is some issues are real hard to solve. And we talked about traffic. I know that sounds the silliest thing, or just safety of our children and our families because of the high level of traffic and the speeding. It's like, geez, it's the hardest thing to solve. I mean, you could, put cul-de-sacs all around and close your community up. I guess that's a way to stop traffic, but that's not a solution. So I'd say those types of things. And again, that's a minor issue. I'm sure if I had more time, I could think of, but you want to solve the problem. I mean, at least I do. I'm a problem solver. I guess that's my business background. So if somebody gives me a problem, I'll try to find the way to solve it and manage it. So the challenge is sometimes the issues that government faces are sometimes a little bit longer than I would have expected to solve, and sometimes it might not be solvable. Might have to be modified slightly. So I would say those are the pros and cons.
Well, how do you like to relax when you're not pushing hard to get the village running on all cylinders? I mean, how do you like to unwind? I read one interview where I think you live near a park, and you said you just love to just like hear the sounds of summer, kids playing baseball and soccer, and parents and friends walking about. I mean, how do you like to unwind?
Yeah. Well, I definitely love that. I live on a park. I love living on a park. I'll never forget, people telling me, well, geez, I mean, doesn't that the bang of the baseball bats and the screaming of the kids bother you? Oh my gosh, I love it. That's life. And so I love that. But in the morning when there isn't any of that activity, I certainly love to hear the birds and see the sun, set and sunrise. It's really calming. I'm a little athletic. I love to, I play paddle and I play pickle. I golf. So there's a lot of things that I can relax with. I mean, almost too much. And I try to take advantage of a lot of it. But yeah, the community through our park district I play bridge. I love bridge. So I do a lot of different things to keep myself healthy and busy. But and friends. I just love the friends that I've developed here in the community and elsewhere. So it's all good. People say, well, is there any regrets? It's hard to find a regret.
Great. Well, final question. I mean, we have some students who are listening to this, and I'm wondering, someone who's had such a remarkable career in the private sector, now in government, public service, if you're talking to a young person and they're thinking about how to launch a career, what have you learned? What broad or general guidance or even specific suggestions would you give to someone who's just maybe leaving university and trying to figure out what they want to do?
Yeah. Well, it's very tough to give guidance on here's the road to happiness, because it could take so many different turns. But the only thing that I often tell people, and it's happened in my life and in my career, is I just keep my world wide open. When I started out after college into a corporation, I rarely said no to anything. Sure, I could do that. Sure, I could do that. So sometimes that might make people feel uncomfortable because they're not sure if they can do something. If you don't know, if you don't take the chance, you'll never know if you could do it. So I tell people, and I continue to tell people, keep your world open, keep your eyes open, and enjoy it. I mean, if there's something that certainly makes you uncomfortable, don't do it. But if there's something that you think you might be able to do or you have an interest in, then pursue it, and pursue it with all your might, for sure. I don't think I would have been in this position of village president had I not taken on that role of clerk, be honest with you. So all I did is say yes to somebody that asked me as we were sitting on the sidelines while our daughter was playing soccer. Yeah, I think I could help here. I mean, I didn't know what the job was. I had no idea. I had to ask her, what does a clerk do? But the point is like, okay, well, I mean, I know it's going to take some time and I don't have a lot of time, but I'm willing to take whatever time it might take to learn something new. And this led me here. If you asked me 13 years ago, would I have been village president? I probably said no, because I didn't know. but I think that's the hope that I wish for everyone is just not only follow your dream, but open up the world and make yes versus no maybe the first answer.
Great.
Mhm.
Well, Kathy, it's been delightful to talk to you and learn about your community and your career and all your work. We'll, of course, follow you at the Municipal League. And maybe we can entice you down to Carbondale. I'm sure the students would love to meet with you and members of the community, learning about just how government works at ground level, which is where many of us have our major exposure to government. So hopefully we can induce you down here and show you a little bit of Southern Illinois.
I would love it. I would love it. Because I'm very interested in public policy, and I'm very interested in, what is brewing and what can we learn from, those that are in education, and learning about public policy. We should learn as well. So yeah, I'd love to take on the invitation. So,
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for watching this edition. We will have this interview on our website, pardon me, later this week. So please show it to family and friends. Thanks for supporting the Institute and keeping the memory of Paul Simon alive and well. Thanks so much.